57th episode of the Meaning Up podcast. I am RB3.
It's your boy, Ace. No, just kidding. It's me. I'm guest
Who's
co-host.
Who's me?
My name is Cade Huseby. I am filling in for Ace today. I know you guys are probably like, what happened to Ace? I took him.
You had him hostage, and you wanted to come in to co-host the Meaning Up podcast this week. Now, this is Cade Huseby, ladies and gentlemen. This is the homie who co-wrote Flick Ticks with your boy, and we've done a lot of other things together. We are fraternity brothers, and homies. Boom. I don't know how that even looks on the split screen. I don't even know if that translates, but let's do it. And we are here to break down the deeper meanings of your favorite film directors. Like you said, Ace is not available. He's really not in the back of your trunk, is he, Cade? Or
no, he's actually in the back of his own trunk. He is busy with a move, I believe.
Yeah, he's moving. So fortunately, he couldn't make it today. But we're happy to have Cade here in his honor.
I really appreciate you letting me come on and talk about this. I know we've been wanting to get me on as a guest. I wanted to meet Ace. I'm a big fan of the Meaning Of, so I wanted to get on here and meet Ace and talk about Judd Apatow. This is great too.
That was gonna be my next question. Have you ever watched an episode of the Meaning Of podcast?
I watched episode 50 in the audio. Let me just tell you the audio.
That's no bueno.
No, I'm kidding. Of course I watched it. I mean, I've watched for like the more popular directors that I know. I mean, you guys have talked about some obscure directors that I have never heard of, but that's just my fault. Man. That's my fault.
Nah. That's our fault. That's why nobody watches our show.
No.
But thanks for coming on, Cade. I know this was a long time in making, as you alluded to. We're covering Judd Apatow today. Your favorite director, if I'm not one of your favorite directors.
Yeah, Judd Apatow slowly became my favorite director as I was becoming more leaning towards comedy, making my own stuff. And some of my favorite movies include Superbad, Knocked Up, This Is 40, 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah.
And so I just became an absolute fan of everything he started doing after, I became aware of his work. And what's interesting is he's actually from a town in the same kind of general vicinity where I grew up on Long Island, New York. Yeah. He went to Syosset High School, and that's like 5 minutes from where I went to school. So it was very interesting to see, like the different aspects of that kind of culture that he brings into his movies, which isn't a lot. It's kind of subtle, but it's definitely there. And,
Now we're going to talk about the New York influence, particularly in a movie like Trainwreck that is completely set in New York. But before we dive into the deep dive of Judd Apatow, let's take some comments from last week's episode.
Ooh.
I don't. As you guys know, I have a particular rule of not reading comments. So usually Ace picks these, but I dove into the comments today and I found 3 really great ones that I thought were great.
Wait, so what are the rules here? Can I respond to them?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, man. Last week. We talked about Cary Fukunaga. I don't know if
director
I'm pronouncing
of Maniac, right?
He directed all of Maniac, True Detective, and all that business. And speaking of True Detective, we have Jay Oliveira. Okay. Just pretend I didn't do that. True Detective Season 1 is so effing amazing. It made me look into screenwriting. That show is gritty, passionate, smart, violent, mysterious, just great all around. I completely agree. True Detective. Are you familiar with True Detective Season 1 or 2? Or?
I'm familiar with it. I've never watched it.
I feel that. Now, I mean, that was definitely a show that came out of nowhere for HBO and really broke down a lot of doors, particularly in the height of the reconnaissance we saw Matthew McConaughey at the time. So that show is definitely amazing. Salute to Cary Fukunaga for doing that one. Our second comment comes from Tony Wagner, big fan of the show, comments very frequently. The big thing about Cary is that he always takes projects that normally would be cliche and makes them feel much more special and exceptional based on how well his films are executed. He is a very experimental director due to the fact that every project he directs is completely different than his previous one. This is why I am excited to see what he will bring to Bond 25. Love the podcast, like always, and what is your most anticipated film for the rest of this year? Wow, thank you, Tony. That was a great comment. What's your most anticipated film for the rest of the year, Kid?
Come back to me.
Come back to you.
Yeah. I'll
address the top half of this. Yeah, I do agree. The fact that every one of his films are very different, have a very different and distinct style. Does make him an experimental director, and I'm very excited to see what he's going to do with the next James Bond movie, particularly because the last time we saw him try to play in a big studio franchise, as we discussed in last week's episode, was with Warner Brothers and developing the It movie, and how Warner Brothers kind of made It. Based on his script, but without him directing, but kind of made it a more commercial product. Kind of wonder if the James Bond people are going to do the same thing. But either way, this is going to be Darren Craig's last James Bond movie. So that's going to be crazy. But did I stall long enough to get anticipated? Because I have a definitive one. But
yeah, I mean, I looked up a list of movies coming out because my memory's not great. A lot of the movies I was looking forward to, like Halloween and A Simple Favor. Those have
I still haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I liked it. I like both of those. A lot of the movies that have been coming out lately that I've gone to see have been, I've enjoyed a lot of them. But I think the most anticipated for the future of 2018 would have to be Creed 2.
Creed 2? Creed 2, yeah. Creed 2. I mean, I was a big fan of the first one. And of course, no Ryan Coogler doing this one, unfortunately. But it's another homie from USC who I'm really excited to see prevail off of directing this one. For me, my personal most anticipated, I got two. There's the new Alfonso Cuarón movie, Roma, that's coming out on Netflix. I know, very experimental, like black and white. It's all that bullshit RB3 likes, but whatever.
Yikes.
I'm excited to see what the new Cuarón film is going to be like, especially since it did really well at the Cannes Film Festival. And number two, I showed you the trailer for it. As soon as I saw the trailer for it, I texted you this trailer for that movie Widows, bro, with Viola Davis.
That looks so good too.
Yeah. The one, Steve McQueen's new one. That one, I'm definitely.
Oh, also, I kind of just skipped my mind. It wasn't on the list I Googled, but the Bohemian Rhapsody movie.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that. That comes out this Friday, I think.
Yeah.
Go see that.
That one looks really good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good biopics that are coming out too. The one with Adam McKay did about Dick, the vice president. I want to say Dick Tracy, but it's not Dick
Richard
Tracy.
Nixon?
No, the vice president who was with Bush.
Oh, vice president with Bush, Al Gore.
No.
I'm kidding.
Anyway,
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney. There we go. I said Dick Tracy. Dick Cheney.
That's close enough.
I always think of Dick.
Let's get into the politics.
Let's get into it now. I don't want to do that just yet. But let's move on to the next comment here. The next comment comes from Jacka J. Wow, that's a great name. As much as I respect the idea of this show and the plot as content, you guys need to either do more research or watch the filmmaker's work, or get someone who has and knows the work. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Jacka. No, I really appreciate this comment, because it's something I think me and Ace have been very transparent about. We don't really get to watch every single movie from every single director every week. And I know that's, that's kind of a problem when we're talking about the work, the meaning of every director, right? But we're trying to, we're trying to incorporate more of the general discussion about the director, more or less.
Gotcha.
And we hope to capture as much as we can. We're obviously not going to hit every movie. I thought last week we did pretty good with Carrie, though. I mean, I think last week we actually hit all of his movies, if I'm not mistaken, or at least Ace didn't finish the first movie, Sam Nomble or whatever. Sam Nomble, which is Cary Fukunaga's first film. He didn't he watched that one halfway through, so we didn't fully finish that one, granted. And I hadn't watched Jane Eyre since high school, granted. But I think we actually had a pretty good discussion about all of his films last week. So I thought last week we did pretty good. The Michael Mann episode we did terrible, and I'll admit that off the top, because that one we only really watched we only really had a great discussion about 4 of his movies when he has an entire body of work. But we're trying here, people. We're trying here.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for the comment. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate that you are a fan of the show and give us constructive criticism, guys. Please leave comments every week on our YouTube channel, and of course, iTunes listeners. We always love you, always appreciate y'all. Y'all actually do more for us than we can ever say. So thank y'all for doing that. Next, we're actually gonna talk to Cade a little bit. You know what I mean? Let's get to the research, the content of Cade Huseby.
Yeah, man. It's it's all a conspiracy.
It's all a conspiracy. You think we live in a simulation, right? Give us a breakdown.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I have an imagination that I think likes to lean into that idea just because it's just fun.
What fuels that imagination though? Tell us the story of Cade, like from the very beginning.
The meaning of listeners want to hear this?
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, ever since a young age, I've been just really drawn to entertainment and acting, filmmaking, TV, and it's something. It's what I spend most of my time doing as a kid and as an adolescent, and still now is watching, consuming video content and performance. And I think if it's something that you love so much, you spend all your time on, I think that just translates naturally into doing it yourself. I think can you relate to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for context, you are a sophomore at USC Film School.
Yeah, production. Where you at?
Production student studying film production, the hardest program to get into. I want to throw a fact at did you know this? It's harder to get into the USC Film School production program than it is to get into Harvard Law.
I did hear about that.
Yes.
And that makes me happy because I'm not smart enough to get into Harvard.
But you are talented enough to get into the production program.
Apparently.
And you're a sophomore, right?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore. What else? I am in DKA.
You're in DKA.
Delta Kappa Alpha.
Delta Kappa Alpha. That's how we know each other.
It's our cinematic gender inclusive fraternity, which is a lot of fun. If you have one in your college, you should definitely consider.
Yeah, look into Delta Kappa Alpha.
Especially if you're listening to the meaning of, get that movie movie questioning going with your fellow decas. Anyways, more about me.
More about keep it coming, man. Tell me, you have a very big position in Hollywood right now. For as young as you are, what a lot of people don't know is, listen. All of our listeners, we have a very, very, very good fan base here. As I'm sure all of our listeners are familiar with Smosh.
I learned how amazing the meaning of fan base is when we made Flick Ticks. I mean, the meaning of fan base showed up and they clicked that like button.
They sure did. They sure did. We're going to get to Flick Ticks in a minute, but I want to get to you and your relationship with one of the original Smosh creators, Anthony Padilla.
And
who is no longer with Smosh, works independently, but you are basically his right-hand man.
I guess. I mean, I emailed him back in August, and I was looking to do an internship or something of that sort, a job in the industry this semester. So I emailed a few of my favorite creators, him being one. He was the only one who responded, and I crafted my email for him, and it actually all started with a tweet, believe it or not. I tweeted out, Anthony Padilla is making Prime content now, and he liked it, and so I got it just I felt like I should just email him and just see what he's interested in and if he needs help. So I asked him do you need. I emailed him. I said, hey, I'm a sophomore at USC. I'm looking to do something this semester. If you need production assistance, creative assistance, whatever you need. And it was a process of getting involved and interviews and stuff like that. But in the present, I'm his production assistant and I help out with making the videos, anything he needs. We have brainstorming sessions, which is really fun. And it's all really crazy to me because as a kid I was a huge Smosh fan, and it's like a dream come true to be working with one of your favorite creators.
Yeah, no, I mean absolutely, and I relate to that. On a much smaller level with these guys here at Schmoes, I was a big fan of them. Emailed them, reached out, and they hooked me up here. But
you definitely inspired me.
No, I definitely did. I definitely don't want to be an inspiration to anybody. But you,
well, you are if you like it or not.
but you have achieved working with one of the biggest YouTubers on this platform, one of the biggest comedy content creators,
and one of the most persistent creators, I think, on the platform.
Exactly. So do you find are you finding a lot of appreciation in working with him? Are you learning a lot? Do you think you?
Oh, I'm learning so much. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. The whole process of making stuff specifically for YouTube audience, which I'm sure you've come to learn at Collider and through the Schmodown, it's a whole. You have to think about the YouTube part of it through and through. It's not just making a sketch comedy video. You know, it's what are the trends? What are people clicking on? What will make them stay engaged and all that. So I've as I've started working for him the past 2 months, I've started catching myself thinking about those things while, like, you know, conceptualizing a video. And he's just I can't say enough good things about Anthony. He's just so such a nice guy, and he's really helped guide me through you know, I guess collaborating with him and making sure that we work well together, and we work really well together. So it's a really fun job.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's super dope, man. You killing it. You're only 20 years old, younger than me, making big moves in this town.
I just emailed him, man.
You just emailed me, and you literally put you casted me in one of Anthony's
that's
videos.
Right. Yeah, the Pussy Spice Latte video.
Pussy Spice Latte, man. That was a great time, man.
Yeah. What was that like for you? What was that experience on?
Man,
I was just busy, you know, keeping my focus on the production.
Like literally doing everything, and you were doing everything. I was just there. Being in shock that I met the guy from Smile. Who I think every kid, you know, every person who grew up in this generation, in the YouTube generation, is familiar with that to one extent or another, right? So it was just kind of blowing my mind. It was a great time, man. That was lit. That was dope.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing it. It was so funny.
Yeah, no,
it turned out so good.
No, it was all him and that delicious drink he was serving. So I was just, but you know, going back to you, Cade. Of course, you're working for Anthony. Of course, you are a part of one of the best film schools in the world. And I'm just humble bragging because, you know, I go to USC. But dude,
so are you, bro.
And you're also part of the world's, you know, or at least one of the best film fraternities, cinematic fraternities in the world too.
Is it like, I don't know if there are any other
I don't know if there's any other cinematic fraternities, but
Alpha Chapter, where you at?
We're the best, and we're just always. I mean, just DK is the best. So if you're a DK, if there's a DK anywhere near your college, if you're in college, definitely pledge. But you also had stand-up comics for a while, which was a podcast that we used to do together.
Sit-down comics.
Sit-down comics, yes. And it was a show that was very comedy-inspired, and I think that's kind of what inspires this conversation that we're having today to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So what do you see as comedy? What's your connection to comedy? Like how connected are you to like give us the breakdown. Why do you feel so strongly about comedy?
Okay, well, I guess I'll start off as I was saying before, you know, like just entertainment in general. And comedy was just always, you know, my number one. It was just like I don't think, you know, drama, horror, any other genre lives up to what comedy, you know, brings to humanity. That's a deep sentence, but I think that, like, I never really started considering comedy as something I could really do with my life until I took a few comedy classes at USC, one of them being a stand-up comedy class. And I knew, like, you know, after every class, whether I had bombed or done really well, that I cared a lot about how I did, and I cared about making people laugh. And so that kind of showed me that, like, you know, you can do comedy and you can get better at it and you can learn and you can collaborate with people. And, like, in my job now, I laugh. I mean, 90% of my job is like trying not to laugh on set. And like that is so, I just feel so lucky to be in that position because I just love comedy, and it's kind of similar to Judd Apatow, why he loves comedy. It's like a reflection of real life, showing, you know, all of our flaws and the good moments, the bad moments, and keeping a positive spirit throughout it all, because, you know, life in general can just be kind of crappy sometimes, but if you can find a joke, or you can find, you know, an irony or a hypocrisy, or, you know, it's all like about being, you know, aware of the context and aware of situations and where everybody lies and everything like that. So I think it's like the most intricate genre And I think it appeals to me the most because it just makes me happy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what it's about, man. And being happy is definitely something we want to incorporate into a lot of the sadness that surrounds us in our society.
Yikes, yeah.
Yeah. But, speaking of bringing joy to some sad situations, let's talk about MoviePass and Flick Ticks, right?
What a great transition. Okay, the meaning of listeners need to understand RB3 is like a podcast genius.
No, I'm not, man.
Did you hear that transition, guys?
Oh, jeez.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Stop gassing me. So Flick Ticks is a film that and of course we've collaborated on many other things together. We've done Artists of Venice before this, and we recently just completed another film that you directed with, or another short, some sketches that we did with that you directed. I DP'd on too, but Flick Ticks was a collaboration that we had kind of cooking for a little bit, and we just kind of sat down and pounded it out, wrote a draft, and wrote more drafts, and yeah. So what was your takeaway from the whole Flick Ticks experience? Because we worked, we were definitely working on that one.
The takeaway from the Flick Ticks experience?
Just give us what Flick Ticks in general, like.
I loved making that project. I thought it was really impressive that we were able to do it, with school and balancing everything. Yeah. And I think it's a testament to how well we work together, because even though we had a lot of obstacles in time, we put it off for a little bit. But I think, the fact that we actually ended up doing it and we were happy with it in the end, it's just like there's no better feeling,
Yeah. No, definitely. And you were obviously co-writer, producer, star. What went into your whole process? I mean, because for me as a director, it's easy for me to just be like, hey, I want to shoot it this way. But for you being, playing all those multiple hats, what was, give us something here. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? Like, what was your experience?
I came out of Flick Ticks realizing a few things about myself as an artist, and that's that. Just in general, I like acting more than I thought.
Okay.
I like producing less than I thought. And I had I'd done both a fair amount, but like as I become more professionally driven, it's more about figuring out what makes me the happiest doing. I want to do more acting. I loved writing. I want to do more writing. I learned a lot writing that script, because I was kind of like the first comedy script I'd written after my stand-up comedy class, so incorporating like those different aspects into the script was a lot of fun. Just joke writing, stuff like that. A lot of like the fake movie titles, that was so fun.
That was great.
And it's just cool, and like you're writing about something you know a lot about. Like you know a lot about movies. I know less than you know about movies.
I don't know about that.
But
we both have pretty extensive knowledge, I think.
Yeah, but still, it was just a really fun experience. And then, meeting Ken Knapsack and having him star in Flick Ticks was like unbelievable. He's so nice. He had us on his podcast. That was so much fun.
Yeah, Knapsack Files, and on the he had us on the Knapsack Files.
Yeah, he had us on Knapsack Files, Life Ranked. So definitely check out that podcast too if you want to hear more about Flick Ticks.
We break it down in depth there.
Yeah, we break it down really in depth, and also if you pay for his Patreon, there's more there about USC Film School.
Yeah.
But I mean, what about you? What was the Flick Ticks experience like for you as the director? Because this is the meaning of what's the meaning of Robert's Flick Ticks?
I don't know what the meaning of anything is that I make, but no, honestly, I just I mean, as both a fan of MoviePass, I feel like you can't be a fan of anything without like having some like harsh criticisms towards it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Without holding it accountable for things that you love, and I loved the MoviePass idea, and I loved what MoviePass represented. I just kind of wanted to rip on some of the shittier elements that they have, but I think ultimately it came. I mean, I thought it came through with a lot of love towards it. I hope if somebody from MoviePass watches it, hope they're not too pissed at it, because I really think that I tried to give a little sympathy and heart to Mr. Knapsack's character.
Yeah, he definitely is a a sympathizable character.
Yeah, he was just trying to do the right thing, man. He was just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of doing the right thing, let's move on into Judd Apatow.
There you go again with that transition. I love it.
That one really didn't make any sense. So I don't.
I know, but that's the art of it.
That's the art of it.
It just still works.
Yeah. Just thank you, man. Hey, man, you should come on more often, man.
Let me know in the comments. Should I come back on?
Let me know in the comments. Let us know how you're doing so far.
Follow me on Instagram.
Follow you on Instagram at Cade Huseby. You can't follow me on Twitter because my Twitter got deleted, but whatever. That's
because you forged an identity and you faked your birth certificate.
I don't know about all that. But let's get into Judd Apatow. He obviously is one of the most prolific producer, writers, directors in Hollywood, responsible for breaking out multiple comedy stars, and just being a tremendous impact.
If you've watched comedy in the past 10 to 20 years, you're most likely watching a Judd Apatow production.
Yeah, or something that kind of takes direct influence from that. And of course, he had a background in stand-up comedy as a youth and all that business. But when you really start diving into his career and his early work with him and Paul Feig, Freaks and Geeks, is one of the earliest things that I definitely recognize off of his filmography.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a show that grew to huge critical acclaim. But he also came off of producing, for Ben Stiller, for the Ben Stiller Show, the Larry Sanders Show, the Cable Guy. So he had an extensive career as a producer before he started making features himself.
And a lot of his early career was stand-up focused. He did stand-up from like the age of 17 to 24 or something like that.
Right.
And that was him, getting his voice, his comedic voice, honing his comedic voice, I feel like. And he would interview a lot of his idols, stand-up comedian idols, through a school like radio show. He would go travel to like their homes. And he actually like wrote a book called, I forget what it's called, but he wrote a book and he published like all those interviews from back when he was a kid.
Oh, really? Wow. That's amazing. No, I mean, he definitely, finding your voice in stand-up is something that's, obviously a lot of people find who they are through their artwork and through what they do, their expression. But stand-up in particular is something that is very vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there to the world. So I think his transition as a film director is interesting, especially like the kind of movies that he ultimately ends up making. Because I feel like a lot of his movies are about vulnerability, are about opening up and trying to be yourself in a world that doesn't really want to, doesn't really want you to be you too.
Yeah. Also with that's so true. And with stand up, it's a lot of like real life experiences, that you end up telling on the stand up stage. And a lot of his movies are really based in real experiences that either he's had or co-writers had or co-producer or something like that. So he really likes to like base his stuff in reality.
Yeah. Well, let's get into what do you think is the overarching theme of Judd Apatow? Like, what do you think if you were to look at his filmography and as a producer, as a director, what would you say is like the overarching idea, the overarching theme that he's trying to get at?
I think the overarching theme he's trying to get at with his work is trying to get the audience to reflect on what really matters in life.
What really matters in life?
Yeah, I think that kind of falls in line with love, the idea of love and romantic partnership, and coming to terms with the difficult shit in life and turning it into comedy.
Yeah, I feel that, and that's what you definitely see in a lot of his producing career, right? So let's talk about some of the things he's produced. Of course, he's had mega hits. Probably the biggest of which I'd probably say the biggest hit he's had as a producer is Superbad.
Absolutely, it's one of, if not my favorite movie ever.
And it kind of broke Jonah Hill out to the world. I agree. It's definitely, I'd probably say in terms of high school movies, you could put this next to any high school movie ever made, and it will stand the test of time and truly live as one of the greatest comedies of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
And you see that you never really understand how much of an impact a movie has until you see like the impact of the stars afterwards sometimes too, right?
Yep.
This is a complete breakout for Emma Stone, Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen, and
Evan Goldberg.
Who wrote the script based on their like real life like high school experiences too, right?
Yeah.
McLovin has become a cultural icon.
Your boyfriend is a dork.
McLovin. Hey man, I still know if I'm repping Kanye. Apparently, he tweeted some apologies. I can't check Twitter because my account's been deleted. But
right.
But
of course.
yeah, there's but Superbad definitely resonated and birthed a lot of the people who we've become familiar with in today's generation. And but yeah, why would you say that's probably your favorite one of his entire career in terms of including producing, including directing?
I think it's my favorite because I can relate to it more than a lot of his other work, just from, the demographic, the age range of the characters, being in high school, right? Yeah.
Yeah, high school. Yeah. Senior.
And also, I love it for the reason that you can see all of these stars, these comedic stars that we all love, before they were Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, Bill Hader. It's like, Emma, even Emma Stone's in it. And I think the writing is so smart, and it just, again, like, it just feels so realistic. Like, everything unfolds in such a real way that you're just so pulled in, and the stakes are relatable. So you're drawn into like that story.
Yeah, I know exactly, and I think that's why that movie hits with so many different audiences. And I think it hits in the same way that I think the TV show, the narrative TV show at least, that kind of brought him out to the spotlight as a producer was Freaks and Geeks. I think Freaks and Geeks possesses a lot of the same qualities, a lot of the same relatability, and definitely the star power too. I mean, we talk about Seth Rogen kind of having the
Martin star power.
The Martin star power. Hey, I like that. Martin Star, obviously, Silicon Valley, Spider-Man Homecoming. Seth Rogen, obviously the biggest comedy star probably in the world right now, next to maybe Kevin Hart or whatever. And Freaks and Geeks, James Franco. Who else? Everybody. Jason
I think
Segel.
That show. I personally think that show is
Sam Levine
ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, your buddy Sam Levine is in it.
Yeah,
like
Sam
I
Levine's
feel like, is he in here somewhere?
Yeah, he might be on one of these walls. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, Freaks and Geeks. I feel like it didn't get renewed, and that's honestly so shocking watching it back because. It's so good. Yeah, it really built up a cult status after it ended, and just became a whole new thing, which is just amazing. And of course, that also brought Paul Feig out to the world too. I really feel like that show would have done well today because geek culture is so prominent. Yeah, it's almost pop culture. Yeah, that show would have killed, especially that show, even though it was made in 1999, 2000s, also set in the 80s though. So it definitely would have played on the 80s nostalgia a lot more today than I probably think they would have. Yeah. It would have had back in the other day. Yeah, you get it. But his other producing work in TV more recently with Crashing and Love, he's just literally lighting the comedy community on fire in a good way. He's on Netflix with Love. He's on HBO with Crashing. Yeah. He's everywhere. He's doing more stand-up now. He's doing a lot of charity shows. Yeah, and of course, we can't forget to mention his work as a producer on Anchorman as well. And Bridesmaids. Yeah. I mean, all of these are like some of my favorite movies. Too. Undeclared, which is like the unofficial sequel to Freaks and Geeks. But yeah, they all do great. But let's really hop into his career as a director, because I feel like when we dissect what he's trying to say thematically, we really should look into what he has dedicated his focus towards the most, which I think is his directing career. And yeah, I think what's interesting about Judd's career is that he's really able to like kind of cultivate his own director, resume, as you will. But like, it just seems like he's really good at figuring out which projects he should produce, which ones he should direct, which ones he should get more involved in or less involved in. And I think that just comes from like how powerful he thinks the story is.
Yeah, and how much I think it's his passion to the material that definitely inspires a lot too. Then, especially when we talk about his first movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, that's a very passionate movie that is all about, which I think is probably a lot of people would consider his best as a director. A lot of people would consider. I don't personally think, we'll get to what I think is my favorite Judd Apatow film later, but this movie is obviously the one that put him on the map. Steve Carell, again, not a big star before this movie, blew up after this.
Isn't that crazy? Everybody who kind of walks in his path like just ends up becoming a huge star.
Yeah, no, it's insane, and yeah, this movie deals with Andy, who is played by Steve Carell, a man who's 40 years old and has not lost his virginity, but he meets Kathleen Keener, and she rocks his world a little bit. This movie is hilarious to me. What's your take on 40-Year-Old Virgin?
I love 40-Year-Old Virgin because it's such a unique story, and I feel like there's definitely like people out there who can relate to it, not about being a virgin necessarily, but about like other things where they build it up in their head so much and they put it off for so long that they actually just can't perform the task itself. I think that's just another example of him giving us relatable stakes. And then, with it being about sex and having a bunch of like coworkers that are, like funny dudes, it just like is an explosion of like laugh after laugh and awkward and tension and all that good stuff. And like them being placed in the Radio Shack store, it's just like it's like the little details that just make you laugh in this one.
Yeah, no. This movie, the Radio Shack. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that definitely puts a bit of a date.
Like shit playing on the TVs all the time.
Yeah. It puts a little bit of a date on like the movie because Radio Shack like doesn't exist. But I think that whole quality of them using the background TVs almost is like an extra comedy prop.
Exactly.
To a certain extent too. Yeah. When they're showing the crazy with the pornos on that one scene,
and the girl lead, what's her name?
Kathleen Keener.
Yeah, she owns a store called "I'll Sell Your Stuff on eBay."
Yeah, right.
Like it's such a time. That's a timestamp.
Yeah. 2000s. That's how we were rolling back then, man. That was consumerism back then. TVs and online eBay.
Yeah. Now Radio Shack's like out of business probably.
Yeah, eBay's damn near out of business too. I actually don't know if that's true, but Amazon's killing it.
Szechuan sauce keeping eBay alive, man.
Szechuan sauce, that's what's up. I mean, this movie definitely deals with a lot of different levels of sexuality, I feel like, to a certain extent. Even though it's about Andy being a dude who is not getting laid, it's also about the people who surround him, right? And how their kind of sexual deviancies kind of surround him. The funniest character to me in this movie is the black homie, and his name slips my mind just that quick. But I just got done watching this movie too. But he's played by Jay, played by Romini Marco. To me, the brother had the funniest lines in the movie whenever he popped up. And it was always the subplot about him cheating on his girlfriend, and how he's dealing with his own like egotistical like struggle with like masculinity to a certain extent too.
Right.
Seth Rogen has a really funny part, and of course Elizabeth Banks is truly hilarious. Or I'm sorry, Leslie Mann is the one who like truly kills me in this movie when she has the drunk driving scene. Yeah, no. What else what else stands out?
I'm just looking at the cast here, and again, it's just another like just total list of stars. We've got Mindy Kaling, Kevin Hart, Kat Dennings, Stormy fucking Daniels.
Is she really in this movie?
Yeah, Jonah Hill, Jane Lynch. As you said, Leslie Mann, Elizabeth Banks, Steve Carell, Paul Rudd.
Kat Dennings playing the daughter of
so funny. But I think a few of my standout favorite actors in this film, definitely Romani Malco, as I say it.
Yeah.
Jane Lynch, and Paul Rudd's character always cracks me up in this.
Oh yeah, Jane Lynch is hilarious. Paul Rudd has kind of his own interesting thing going on with his. And I think that's where Judd Apatow movies really work. There's different levels to the comedy, right? There's different people who define different standards and different perspectives on the same theme, and it all kind of runs throughout their sexuality. Now, a bigger question I kind of want to pose to you, which I think is something that some corners of the internet has kind of adopted. I think is a very interesting theory. Is Andy, Steve Carell's character, is he actually gay in this movie? Is he actually not like women? That could be a very possible because there's a lot of ways that he displays a greater sense of affection for his male counterparts than his female counterparts in a lot of ways. But that's some readings of it, and other readings are that he's potentially closeted. What do you think? What do you take away from that?
I personally don't necessarily think that's even relevant to the story. However, I think that's really interesting because it could kind of help explain the parts of this movie the parts of this guy's story that we don't see. The more like contextual stuff that came before the movie in terms of like the universe of the movie.
Because it shows flashbacks of when he tries to hook up with girls previously.
Yeah, I think again, I don't think it's relevant to this. However, I think that Steve Carell always plays that character that is sexually and romantically oblivious.
Yeah, ambiguous.
Oblivious is the word I was trying to use. He's oblivious of picking up signs of his own feelings towards somebody.
Okay.
We see that a lot in The Office as well. And I think in the time that he grew up being a nerd himself, it's like he was always told to like probably, become that macho man. He probably thought he never lived up to those expectations. And we see that fall throughout the 40-Year-Old Virgin of him taking down his like dolls and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes into his character for sure, but I don't know if he's necessarily gay.
Right. Now a second question that I would like to ask, and this is unrelated, but when you mention the fandom that he has on his walls, right? When he has the Iron Mans, the before Iron Man was actually popular too, by the way, the Thors, all those toys. A lot of people are, that's kind of the stereotype for fandom, right? For nerddom, that you're 40 years old, you're still playing with action figures and comic book characters. Do you think that since 2004 that stereotype has kind of flipped a little bit? Because I think the stereotype of the fan,
what it means to be a fan.
Yeah, the fandom being the desexualized, the virgin, because that's an old timey belief that still carries through. But do you think we've evolved since then, or?
I think we've definitely evolved since then. I also think it's interesting because you mentioned all the things in his room and the collectible items, right? But like, if you think about it from his perspective, like this was before there was so much exposure to like the internet community, and like I feel like that's kind of where the nerd community kind of grows is through the internet. And somebody who these movies, these fandoms mean a lot to him. There's not going to be like the internet, the Instagram Explore page to just like go look at Iron Man clips, so you have to have the poster. I think it also shows that he's like he is a guy who cares about things that don't matter, and that's kind of where his flaw is. He finds like the meaning in like
the toys more than he does.
The toys, the posters, the ideas, what his friends think about.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say next.
But I think we've evolved, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Do you I think the biggest part of it is he uses the toys and he uses, all those things as kind of a mask for his inadequacies and proving to his friends of his manlyhood or whatever. He like you said, he's kind of putting on his mask for his buddies, and he's not satisfied with like his relationship with. I mean, that's why that's also partially why the whole "is Andy gay?" question comes up, is because they literally have that whole conversation. Oh, you're gay if you do this. You're gay if you do that. But he's so worried about his perception of the way that his friends think about him, that he doesn't focus on getting actually laid. So, yeah. I mean, any thoughts or?
I think the whole like gay thing is also a timestamp for this movie.
Yeah.
I think this was,
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a time when the word gay was used, just
as an insult.
As an insult, as like sort of a
slur,
a demasculinizing word. But wait, what was your question again? Was it?
Or do you just think that I was just further elaborating on him being so concerned with what his friends think, that that impression of him. Of his own image might be,
Well, I think somebody who's 40 years old and is still a virgin, they have such a negative image of themselves, and that translates into low self-confidence, which then, if you think, 100% I'm going to get rejected, then you never put yourself out there.
Right.
And, that's what he does. And what Judd Apatow likes to do is really have a flawed character, a flawed protagonist, so that by the end they learn something about themselves and the world around them, yada, yada.
Right.
But I think that this character is extremely flawed. And I think from the outside looking in, as a stranger, it's really easy to see that. But I think in this universe where, this character exists, maybe he's not able to see that so clearly. Yeah,
right. Now, you mentioned flawed characters, which Judd Apatow is great at, particularly with Andy. I think it successfully shows in his next film, Knocked Up, which stars Seth Rogen, Katherine Heigl. We laugh every time we say her name now, but
what happened with her? Didn't she like cuss somebody out or burn a bridge or something?
Yeah, she burned a lot of bridges, and particularly in working in this movie, she has some not too positive words to say about the process of this movie and how her character was represented in this movie.
What do you mean?
Well, her character is kind of presented as a very stuck-up, kind of tight-ass,
Okay,
woman.
wait, can I get into that really quick?
Yeah, sure. Go. Let's grab it.
So I think that, bouncing off the flawed character thing, the main character in this, played by Seth Rogen, he is extremely flawed. Yeah. And that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. He's making his job is literally coding a website where you can see celebrities' boobs. So, like, there's flaws there. And I think Katherine Heigl's difficulty with her character might come from the thing that Judd Apatow likes to do the most. Controversial. I think what he likes to do the most is put a flawed character up against a really strong character who's really sure of themselves. And that's what we see in Katherine Heigl's case. But again, she's flawed too in that she thinks life should be this perfect thing wrapped up in a bow. And then, she gets shocked when she's pregnant with this this guy's baby.
Seemingly loser guy. Bias.
Yeah, isn't she like a reporter at E or something? Yeah. Those scenes are so funny. I think that's also such a time. I love how he puts these little timestamps in there because E is so irrelevant, I feel like, nowadays.
It kind of is.
All they do is regurgitate social media posts.
Hey, well, I actually don't watch E, so I don't know what they're actually doing. If you're looking for some movie news, people, watch Collider Movie Talk every Monday through Thursday from 4 to 5.
Yep.
Anyway,
that's what I watch.
Yeah, do you watch Movie Talk?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, dude.
I believe you.
I watched the meaning of all of it.
Really? What was our last episode?
The Maniac episode, or
see, news again. Anyway. All right. So, Knocked Up is actually one of my favorite. Actually, no, Knocked Up is my favorite romantic comedy of all time. This movie, I for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know how. I'd never even think of conceiving a child or any of that nature. I have no relationship to this story at all, but for some reason, this movie just always touches me in a certain type of way that is unusual for most romantic comedies too. And I think it really does play on, you're right, the flawed character, the severely flawed Ben Stone, who don't get it twisted. Like, he's a dumbass.
Yeah, he's a fucking moron. Like,
he sits at home, smokes weed, tries to program a computer, but he shows he has potential, and he shows that he's ready to take care of this baby that he has always wanted to that he's wanted to take care of. And of course, and that he doesn't want to take care of, but he wants to get involved in that life. And this is a particularly big issue in America in 2007. I mean, you know, mid 2000s, the whole pregnancy wave was off the charts.
What do you mean the pregnancy wave?
Just people getting pregnant, like especially a lot. You know, it was a lot.
Was that because the iPhone came out? Or?
No, not just because the iPhone came out, but the times are changing where. You know, I think in the mid 2000s in particular, particularly with like underage pregnancies, I think was on the tip of the tongue for a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess they were like glorified through like Teen Mom and like 18 and Pregnant.
Yeah, and then I mean that was just what people cared about. And Juno was also one of the biggest comedy hits that came out during this time period. And yeah, I mean that was just what was on the minds of people during that time. But this movie,
like, fuck, Obama's president. Let's get fucking pregnant, bro. Everything's gonna be okay.
Year before Obama was president. This is when Bush was president. So,
shit.
I don't know. I don't know what that says, but yeah, no. This I
like fuck. We're screwed. Let's get pregnant.
For some reason, cinema and television and the culture in general was just fascinated with pregnancy. So this movie kind of came out during that time. But I think this movie is hilarious. And I think this movie's representation of a guy who is a stoner. He's a stoner, no doubt about it. But who is functional enough to manage some responsibility.
What's really interesting to me is like how Judd will like glorify the stoner, but then also make the stoner also when it show him in a negative light.
Yeah.
It's like. It's almost like he's trying to show us, like, you know,
both sides
of the coin.
Yeah, both sides of the dumbassery that comes with smoking weed the entire day, like Ben does, and Ben Stone in this movie.
His last name's Stone.
Yeah, I mean Stone. Hey, there we go. Judd Apatow putting in names, but I think it's particularly funny, you know, when you look at the couple of Debbie and Pete, right? They're kind of...
Oh, my God. I love that couple, yeah.
And they're kind of meant to represent the actual Leslie Mann, Judd Apatow, like, real-life relationship, right? To kind of put together. And it's just funny that he kind of represents himself through Pod Rudd's character, like, in this movie.
Yeah, I think he also represents himself through Seth Rogen's character as well.
Yeah.
I was watching something... I forget what it was, but he was talking about the scene where the water breaks and they have to go to the hospital and how like the doctor wasn't the one that they planned. And like that whole scene was based on complete real experience with him and Leslie Mann having their first child. And like their doctor was actually at a bar mitzvah in San Francisco, like the doctor in the movie.
Right.
So it's so cool to me how like these moments seem so like grand, but they're really just like they take from real life, you know? And like I think that's one of the reasons I like him as a director so much is he incorporates like a lot of things that kind of remind you about, you know, how life is its own story.
Right. Now, this movie has a surprising amount of heart, and it, I think it genuinely does have an affection for caring about his characters and presenting all of these people in kind of a more of a positive light, but also of like everybody here has problems, you know?
Yeah, I mean the Leslie Mann, Paul Rudd character, you know, they have problems even though they seem perfect, and you know, Seth Rogen's character has problems, and he also has things that make him a great person, even though he seems from the outside like a total moron, you know?
Right.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, total nice guy, but you even see through like his friends, like through Martin Starr and Martin, who's played by Martin. I actually really love that. Like Jason Segel plays Jason, Jay Baruchel plays Jay, Jonah Hill plays Jonah, Martin Starr plays Martin.
Me too.
I think that's hilarious. But then I think it's even funnier when you look at like how that side of the spectrum is how like opposite, how polar opposite their lives are, but they each kind of have like their crew of misfit dumbasses. You know what I mean? Allison has Debbie and Pete, but Seth Rogen has Jonah and Jay and all those guys, and it's just funny how that whole world.
Yeah, it's like the friends kind of set the bar for what their characters expect out of like relationships and the people they get along with, and then they're so different that when they come together, it's funny. Also, I wanted to mention before we move on to the next movie that Knocked Up established kind of his very own cinematic universe in his own filmography.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was gonna jump right into. When with Debbie and Pete, how they kind of got their own spinoff movie based on Knocked Up with This Is 40, right?
Yeah, and I don't think it's a decision that necessarily needed to be made, but I think it's really cool that he did make it because it kind of ties his movies together in a way that shows that, like, oh, these are, really realistic kind of snippets of life, and here's what these characters end up doing and going through.
Right.
And, like, even though you weren't the main... Even though there wasn't like something crazy happening to them at that point during Knocked Up, but like, hey, there's still like something's gonna happen to them at some point.
They were still bickering back and forth and Knocked Up. I mean, shit, literally Paul Rudd's character Pete was like sneaking out of his house to play fantasy baseball and seeing Spider-Man 3 by himself. I also think it's really funny that Spider-Man 3 was like the hype movie of 2007.
Yeah, I love how he put it in his movie. It's like he loves to just like pull from real life.
Yeah, nah, and even with that interview with James Franco in this movie is hilarious. But with This Is 40, it kind of highlights the difficulties of aging, right, as a married couple, right?
Yeah.
And especially with being parents at that age too. What's your takeaway from This Is 40?
This Is 40 really taught me to look at my relationship with my own parents from their perspective, and kind of realize that they are people too. They have flaws, they're older and they show you life, but they're also on their own journeys. That's just one thing I got from it. But I think what I really like about this movie outside of its plot is that he incorporated his wife and his two daughters, Leslie Mann and Judd Apatow and Iris Apatow. And they were also
Knocked Up.
They were also in Knocked Up, and like you get to see them age. And I think it's cool that he incorporates like their real personalities and like an exaggerated form and a fabricated form to an extent, but like it makes you wonder how much of Paul Rudd's character is like Judd.
Well, that's what I was gonna be my very next question. How do you see the line between actually literally portraying your entire family on screen as your personal representation and it being like just a fictional movie,
Where's the line?
Yeah, where's the line? Like, do you think this is because I mean, when your wife and child are in this movie, but Paul Rudd is as Pete is the substitute. Is Pete really Judd Apatow, or is that who he is as a character, just straight up? Or
I think you do get to know Judd through his character, but I don't think they're exact replicas of him. Just like how Leslie Mann isn't playing Leslie Mann,
right,
and how the two daughters are kind of exaggerated too. But I think again, I think he really takes on the philosophy that in order to write about life and stories, you have to go out and like live your life and live your story. And I think he brings those back to the script, and he makes sure to hit all of like a plot point that makes sense and like elevate the story and the 3-act structure, whatever he likes to do. But I don't think they're replicas, but I think you can get to know a lot about Judd through his work, and I think that's one of the reasons I like him so much as a director, is because it's harder to separate the art from the artist in his case.
Yeah. No, and he makes himself very transparent, I think, as a director too. Which is very valuable, and I think one of his most transparent movies is where really get an idea of who Judd Apatow is as a person and his position in life and his kind of ideology on life to a certain extent is in his 2009 film Funny People, Funny People is a movie starring Adam Sandler, Seth Rogen, of course, again, and it's about an aging stand-up comedian who's dying and must cope with the idea of dying in and of himself. How deeply rooted in sadness stand-up comedy truly is, and only to have that sadness kind of exemplified in death, but also having to crawl yourself back out of that and readjust back to real life after surviving a disease like he survived. But what's your takeaway on Funny People? Do you enjoy this movie? This is one of, I'd say it's probably Judd Apatow's most divisive film that he's made. But where do you land on it? Do you really enjoy this one, or?
Yeah, I really, really do enjoy this one. I can't say that I enjoy it more than perhaps Knocked Up or Superbad, some of his producing work. But I do really like it. It's hard for me to kind of rank his movies because I feel like they all just reach me really well. But Funny People for me, I think it kind of again shows a character that's vulnerable, especially one that doesn't like to be vulnerable. Adam Sandler's character is very, very confident, and he's a hilarious guy. And I think a lot of Judd Apatow's career is about honoring comedy itself, and I think that this movie really does that.
No, I definitely think so too. And particularly speaking from the comedy perspective, this is another perspective that Judd Apatow has had previously as a director too, is his background in stand-up. So incorporating that into this movie, I think also heightens the kind of self-reflectiveness that he's trying to put on here.
Yeah, what did you think about it?
I really enjoy this movie. I've always really enjoyed Funny People, even when I first saw it. Now I know the biggest problem with people's perception of this movie comes in the fact of the marketing. I think the marketing really didn't do a good job of really portraying the movie for what it was.
I could see that.
Yeah, the trailers really spoiled the entire movie, and they kind of sold it as like kind of this upbeat comedy where I really do think
it's a dark comedy. I think.
I'd almost put this as a fucking drama, man. Like I think this is like a hardcore.
Well, actually, that's another thing. Is he really Judd Apatow really likes to think of his comedies as dramas because what he does is has a drama at the central of the plot, and then from there, he adds like the little details, little lines here and there to make you laugh. I think that's why his movies are so strong. It's because there's such like that sharp like style.
Yeah. No, this movie has a real emotion.
It's like a fine aged cheddar cheese.
Fine aged cheddar cheese. Exactly. Now with this movie though, kind of dividing a lot of Judd Apatow fans. I kind of want to address some of the criticisms that we usually see in Judd Apatow movies, right? Like this movie in particular is pretty long. This movie is well over 2 hours. And that's something that Judd Apatow has gone throughout his entire career as a director, is that his movies are just too long. I mean, 40-Year-Old Virgin is relatively short, but Knocked Up is 2 hours and 9 minutes. This is 40 is 2 hours and 10 minutes. Funny People, I'm not sure exactly like the runtime of this one, but that also has a pretty long runtime. Do you think that, particularly with comedy too, with comedy, the expectation with comedy is get in and get out, but with Judd Apatow movies, usually range over 2 hours long. Do you think that's something that is warranted as a warranted criticism, or that's a fair evaluation, or?
I think it is a fair evaluation because I think he has a problem killing his darlings, or that's the saying or whatever.
Right.
And I think Funny People is one movie where that really stands out. But at the same time, like, I think his characters are so strong and the stakes are so relatable and important that I think that, like, I personally am willing to stick around for the whole thing. And I care about his characters a lot. He does a good job of making his audience care. So I think, like, if you're an invested audience member, it's maybe not that big of a deal. But for you personally, do you find it annoying?
No, I don't find it. I don't find it annoying in this movie in particular. I actually think again, I think this movie is really more of a drama, like a real hard hitting drama.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does have problems. I think the third act does kind of fall apart to a certain extent, like. But that has nothing to do with the length. I don't think the length is a problem in this movie, nor in Knocked Up. For me, This Is 40 is way too long.
Yeah, that one's way too long.
Yeah, that one is definitely like, oh god, like come on, let's pick this up. And then Trainwreck, I thought was a little bit on the longer side too, but that's not for nothing for giving 2 hours of quality comedy entertainment. I mean that's hard for anybody. Making a 2-hour movie is hard for anybody to do, let alone making a 2-hour comedy that's digestible.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when I watch a lot of this, I watch like almost every show he produces, and it seems like there's not so much a cliffhanger, but it's almost like, wait, I didn't get to like see where that finished before the episode is done, you know? So I think his influence kind of works really well in the TV space. In the movie space, maybe not so much if it's not like an epic, like Star Trek or whatever. It's
right.
3 hours or whatever. But like
last Star Wars is like 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think that like when people go in to see a Judd Apatow movie, they're kind of expecting, like you said, fast paced, witty stuff like that. But it's not really his thing, and I think that's why he has such a strong niche in like the Hollywood community, because he's like so respected for like creating these really big scope stories. Right,
but within those big scope stories, he also incorporates a lot of improv comedy too. That he allows his actors to just kind of riff to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that was present in Funny People, but that's definitely a style that was huge in 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up and a lot of his movies. Some people would actually argue that that's what's probably killing the modern like comedy movies today, right? Like
the improv?
Yeah, like, to a certain extent, because really, outside of the Judd Apatow movies that are doing it, a lot of people aren't really vibing with the big studio comedies and the kind of a lot of people would contribute the seemingly laziness of like the just throwing a camera and letting the improv roll. A lot of people are contributing that to Judd Apatow's influence. What would you say? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say to that is. Shoot, I literally just forgot. Oh, okay, here it is. I just remembered. Okay. What I would say to that is I think that specific issue is about predictability within a story. And I think for me and maybe a lot of audience members who don't know specifically that this is what's happening to them is they're kind of seeing a story unfold that they've seen before. And they think, oh, this is so predictable. I mean, that's a problem that I have a lot with like these big studio comedies.
Right.
And I think a lot of Judd's movies aren't so predictable, and I think when you have a plot that is strong and keeps the audience engaged with strong characters, that improv really can't do anything but bolster the comedy, especially when you have such great stars who really know their craft and like love comedy just like Judd. I think that improv can like only help, like in Bridesmaids, when he produced Bridesmaids. I think a lot of the comedy in there was improv, and I think it really helped because Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph and like all of those actresses were so strong, and like they knew their characters so well that they knew what would propel the plot forward while also making you laugh. Yeah, no,
absolutely, and I think that's why. I think that's what the improv makes his style distinctive and unique. But I mean, it also can contribute to the long pace of his movies, because sometimes those scenes just keep going and going, man. Sometimes they just keep going and going.
It's like, this is the end. Like, where's the end?
Yeah, hey, I love This Is the End though. And actually, my favorite standout scene in this movie is, of course, the scene with Eminem. With Eminem and Adam Sandler at the restaurant. I think that scene's hilarious. Even though Eminem can't really act, and it was clear that he can't act, but I thought that scene is just hilarious. By the way, great year in rap beef, man. Great year in rap beef. Great year. MGK, Eminem, Drake versus Kanye and Pusha T. The new one, Cardi B and Nicki Minaj. Where you land on that one, man? I know you're a big Nicki Minaj fan.
Dude, Cardi B, like, Cardi who?
Oh, whoa, shots being fired.
She was arrested, bro. Like, she's a criminal.
Oh, man.
No, but I think Judd Apatow would definitely be on Nicki Minaj's side.
He would be on Nicki Minaj's side? Okay,
Yeah, I have that. I'm just going to take that authority above myself.
The New York, or they're both from New York, so I was going to say New York, but they're both, Nicki and Cardi are both from New York. Anyway.
But Nicki's the queen of rap, whereas Cardi is a love and hip hop star who released a song.
Oh, that's messed up, man. That's cool. You don't talk about Cardi B like that.
Yeah, she can throw a shoe at me. I don't care.
Listen, man, female rap beef is the best kind of rap beef, if you ask me. They really getting down and dirty. But
what do you think the meaning of, listeners? Leave us in the comments below.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Whose side are you on? Whose side do you think Judd would be on?
Nicki Minaj, Cardi B. He's probably watching this female rap beef and was like, "Damn, I really wish I could incorporate all this female power into my latest film." Oh wait, he did, and that's in Trainwreck starring Amy Schumer, very pro feminine.
I'm weak.
I was trying really hard to make that transition, bro. I didn't know how to go.
No, it was flawless.
Yeah, Trainwreck is, of course, his most recent feature that he's done.
I love Trainwreck, Robert.
Starring Amy Schumer. Starring Amy Schumer.
LeBron James.
And LeBron James, yes.
Bill Hader.
Hey, listen, LeBron. That was the reason I wore this Laker jersey. That was the only reason I wore this Laker jersey today, people.
Is that LeBron's?
LeBron. No, this is not LeBron. This is Lonzo Ball. Me and Ace have had this argument multiple times on camera.
It's your boy Ace.
It's Ace here, and he's criticizing Lonzo Ball again. Lonzo Ball's been killing it this season, as of the last 2 games at least. But yeah, let's get into Trainwreck. Trainwreck, starring Amy Schumer, who, you know, before this movie, I wasn't really familiar with Amy Schumer at all. Coming out of this movie, I really enjoyed Amy Schumer's performance and what she brought to the table. You know, she obviously wrote the script for this movie too. I'm not a fan of Amy Schumer today, but in this movie, she really put on a showcase and her comedic style. What do you take away from Trainwreck though?
I think Trainwreck is. I think it's evidence of like Judd Apatow's progression as a director. I think he took a lot more risks in this movie in terms of like comedy setups and payoffs and stuff like that, with like the LeBron James character and like Amy Schumer's character as a whole. But I think it's a similar kind of thing, where you have like the super flawed character up against the love interest that's like super well put together.
It's like the flip of Knocked Up.
It's like a flip of Knocked Up, yeah. And I think Amy Schumer's writing like really plays into that, and I think that's like Judd Apatow gives Judd Apatow a lot to work with while he's directing. Mm-hmm. But overall, I'd give Trainwreck 2 thumbs up. I think it's also another movie where, like in most of his movies, where it's kind of like you forget that the camera's there, and like, you know, the coverage is not basic but simple enough that it's not distracting, and it's not about the filmmaker, it's about the content. Yeah. And I think like that's something he does really well.
Now, would you say that this movie kind of rejuvenated Judd Apatow's career to a certain extent? Because I feel like this is 40. Well, I mean, not rejuvenated his career, but as a director, this is 40 didn't have the greatest reception. Neither did Funny People. But Trainwreck was a major hit. It got nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Comedy Musical. It came out and made a ton of money at the box office. Do you think that was because of the influence of Judd Apatow, or was it because of the star power of Amy Schumer, or a little bit of both?
I think it's definitely both. I think it's an iconic duo. I think that this was like a time in his life where he was like you said, not about like rejuvenating his career, etc. I think like he was really comfortable in the producing position, and I think like he probably wanted to get back to his roots a little bit with like stand-up styled script directing, and like really putting his influence on it. And I think you apparently during the filming of this movie, like every night he would go out and do stand up with Amy Schumer in like the Comedy Cellar in New York City.
Interesting.
So I think this movie has a lot of like that energy to it, where it's like super fast paced and like just really trying to make you laugh, and I think it succeeds. What about you?
I think it succeeds for the most part. I think this movie is really good. To me, this movie is really long, and I think that there's definitely moments of like extended like jokes that I'm like, all right, this could be trimmed down a little bit.
Yeah, true.
Particularly in the what was that one party they went to? Like it was like a baby shower or something. They went to one. Like
I think it was a baby shower
or something, but there was a scene where they're all talking about some bullshit, and then it cut to like Bill Hader's character, and he's talking to the guys about some bullshit, and to me it was like, all right, like it's 2 hours and 5 minutes long, like hey,
right.
let's push that a little bit, but beyond that, I really enjoy this movie. It's tough. It's a little tough for me, Cade. I'm not gonna lie, because I really don't like Amy Schumer. And I really don't like Lena Dunham, Lena Dunham's not involved in this movie, but she is involved in Girls, which is the big Judd Apatow produced show that was like on during that time.
Yeah.
And they both present feminism in a very empowering way, but I also think it presents it in a very. I also think it presents feminism in a very privileged way to a certain extent too, and it's not like necessarily a knock towards the movie in particular. I think it's just more towards my negative attitude towards Amy Schumer and Lena Dunham, even though Lena Dunham has nothing to do. It's mostly with Girls that I don't really fuck with. The show Girls.
I've never actually. That's like the only Judd Apatow production I've never watched is Girls.
Yeah, I
don't know why.
I watched the first 2 seasons. First 2 seasons are interesting. Adam Driver in that show is crazy good. But I just never jived behind this. There's kind of like this aura of like for lack of a better term, white feminism that's kind of throughout these movies that don't really represent any struggle or any kind of actual problem of that women face to a certain extent. I mean, not actual problem in the sense of like there's no problems being addressed. This movie's obviously about like sexuality, about femininity, about the expectations of men and women, and especially with misogyny and all that stuff, and monogamy. I think that's also a big theme of this movie that doesn't go.
John
monogamy.
Cena's character hits on that, I think, a lot.
Yeah, and where he wants a monogamous relationship where she doesn't. And I think those are great issues, important issues to address. Also, sisterhood is another one that's also big in this movie with Brie Larson's character as well.
Wait, so what specific issues do you have with this movie?
Well, besides the moments that I talked about before, the improv, I feel like is too much. But it's not necessarily a particular problem with the movie. I just think it doesn't really represent.
You have a problem getting over the Amy Schumer hurdle?
Amy Schumer, and I think also it doesn't really portray. I just think there's the conflict in this movie is not necessarily a conflict that is
relatable.
Not relatable, but I think there's a much harder uphill battle that a lot of women have to face that is a lot more difficult than maybe that's unfair for me to say. Maybe I shouldn't speak in that sense, but I also just think
I think you're right about that.
I think there's a lot of I mean, they obviously show a little bit of her work life and the relationship with Tilda Swinton in this movie.
I think a lot of what you're talking about is true.
I think it's raunchy to be raunchy, and I think there's a lot more of a content. There's a lot more content in this and what this movie's trying to present in terms of femininity, in terms of sexuality, in terms of all this stuff. But I think this movie instead sometimes chooses the more raunchy route instead of the more content, like route of that
You're right.
could. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. What you're talking about reminds me of one scene in the movie, and like I think it might be the first scene where the dad is talking about the dolls, and he's trying to explain to the girls like, well, what if you could only play with one doll for the rest of your goddamn life? Like, how would that make you feel?
Yeah.
And he thought it's an analogy for cheating on his wife and the girl's mother, and like Amy Schumer is like probably 5 years old in that scene. So I think similarly to a lot of his movies, it's like about an internal conflict of trying to. I think this movie specifically is probably about if I had to say something about what this movie's about, it's about, you know, Amy Schumer's character allowing herself to love somebody and actually love them and not just fuck them for the sake of like getting laid. I think that's a lot about like what you were talking about. And I think with like internal conflicts like that drive plots, it's like a little harder to grasp onto, and it's a little harder to relate to for a general audience, me included.
Yeah. And for guys too, I should say that too. Like I'm not the demographic that this movie speaks to, so whatever I say here really doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I mean, well, it does matter because you watch the movie. It's just like, it's just like.
I don't think it matters, ladies. If you're listening, my opinion doesn't matter.
Let us know in the comments. Do you think Robert's opinion matters? But I think like Bill Hader's character for me as a guy was like extremely relatable.
Yeah.
I think like the career-driven love interest versus like the versus Amy Schumer's character. I think it was just really funny, and like the difference between. I think like what John Cena represents in this movie versus what Bill Hader represents in this movie is like totally apparent by their physique, and so like I totally like think the casting is spot on.
Yeah, no, and John Cena is great in this movie. Now another point that is you know that has been brought about this movie is the portrayal of like the underage sex scene or sexual relationship here. Now,
wait, remind me, what was that?
With Ezra Miller's character, who she makes out with, who's the intern at the job that she works at, and she goes to his house, tries to have sex with him, and he reveals that he's only 17, and yeah, you know his name I'm talking about, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie in a while, but.
Okay.
But I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and his mom busts in, and then he tries to do coke on her, and
yeah.
What
about it?
I just think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting that this movie goes as far as portraying that kind of that kind of thing, especially in today's era, especially in today's with sexual assault being a big thing and harassment and all that. This movie portrays it in somewhat of a comedic way, but do you think this joke would still stand up and if it came out like in this very moment?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? But what if it was flipped? What do you think if it was a man who is trying to hook up with the intern at his job?
Well, it's not this. I don't think it's the same necessarily in terms of this movie specifically. I think Amy Schumer. I mean, okay. The thing with like the gender flip for that is, it's never okay. It's never okay to, think that somebody under the age of 18 is consenting, or I guess in the state of California, 16. I'm not sure.
I don't know what the laws in New York are.
But I think what this scene represents is that they want you to think about that, and they want you to realize that this character has hit rock bottom, and like she doesn't know what love is anymore, and so she's just grasping at straws, and this is like rock bottom for her character. Yeah. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's where.
I think like in the context of the movie, I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, no.
Because it's so fucked up.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly what Amy Schumer and Judd Apatow are trying to go for in that. So
yeah.
Yeah, no, there was but yeah, no.
But Tilda Swinton's character cracks me up in this movie.
She's amazing.
Oh my god,
she reminds me a lot of Meryl Streep and The Devil Wears Prada to a certain extent.
Yeah,
just that like mean boss lady.
You know what she reminds me of? I don't know if you watched like The Office season like 8 or 9. Have you seen? But like Nellie Bertram, for anybody who like, knows Nellie Bertram, she reminds me of that character, which is one of my favorite characters on The Office, even though she's like hated by a lot of the fans.
Yeah.
But again, like the star-studded cast, we've got Bill Hader, Pete Davidson,
early
Mike
role.
Birbiglia,
a lot of SNL stars,
Band.
a lot of SNL stars in this movie.
Brie Larson, dude.
Brie Larson, our new Captain Marvel.
Randall Park, Daniel Radcliffe,
Ezra Miller, our Flash. And
Nikki Glaser,
LeBron James. Whoa. Marissa Tomei is also another one. Yeah, no, they have. This movie doesn't spare any expenses in terms of having a ensemble cast that really reflects what the movie is, I guess, trying to say and trying to go for. Every character kind of represents their own kind of misrepresentation of love too.
Yeah, totally.
Her father is a prime example of somebody who is a complete fuck up in his romantic lifestyle, and same thing with I mean, I think with all the characters just kind of deal with that dichotomy with, and I think that's what makes it really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think because it's Amy Schumer's script, like it's a little bit more edgy and a little bit more exaggerated than the stuff Judd usually works with, like more real life based stories. Mm-hmm. But I think what Judd brings to this is bringing it back down to earth a little bit, and I think like you see how exaggerated it is through LeBron James' character.
Yeah,
when he's playing himself, but he's really not playing himself.
Yeah.
He's playing the image that everybody expects him to be.
Yeah.
LeBron. But I think like Judd's directing really helped this movie become the success it was.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I mean, I think that's apparent in looking at the rest of Amy Schumer's filmography after this. But not to shit on Amy Schumer. Amy Schumer, much respect for stealing jokes. So no, I'm not trying to hate.
Besides that, like I generally like her stuff.
Really?
I think it's funny. I think it's like edgy enough that it just like is different than a lot of stuff that people play safe. But
yeah, I'm not a fan of just the whole like edgy to be edgy thing.
Yeah.
To me, it's. Yeah. To me, I've always felt like this movie and her entire stand-up career in general just has this like very like there's not really much being said outside of
I think there are. I'll say this. I think there are 100% comics, especially female comics, that are so much funnier than her that deserve the spotlight that she's gotten.
No, I'm not trying to take away a spotlight or anything either. Like,
no,
I
will like happily say that like there are comics who deserve her spotlight more than
you showed me. That one lady who was pregnant, who did was that you showed me the pregnant?
Yeah, the Netflix show.
Yeah. I can't remember who that particular comic was.
Let me look it up.
But that to me was like, damn, that's fun.
Ali Wong.
If you've not seen Ali Wong, man, to me that shit was like funny and like insightful, to some extent.
Yeah. Ali Wong is so funny. I love that set.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like even her friends, like Tig Notaro, who's like a legendary stand-up comedian, I think like she should like do something with Judd Apatow. I think a lot of Chelsea Handler stuff I really like too.
Chelsea Handler, yeah. Chelsea Handler definitely.
But I feel like Amy Schumer like hit this point. I think like her career trajectory like perfectly matched with like the I guess like thoughts of society at the time or whatever. I don't know. I feel like she just like I feel like she does empower women in a good way, and I think that a lot of female comedy fans like really fuck with it.
Yeah, no, I mean definitely. I mean, no,
she has her stuff.
She has a massive fan base. All the Amy Schumer fans are probably gonna yell at me, whatever. I don't give a fuck. But
hey, I like her too, guys. So don't yell at me.
Yeah, no, Kay's a big fan, and a big fan of this movie too, which I'm a big fan of too. I feel like I went a little negative on this, but I genuinely do really enjoy every Judd Apatow movie.
I feel like it was the best like female-based comedy movie since Bridesmaids. But it definitely did not meet Bridesmaids Bridesmaids.
Yeah, well, shit. There's not a lot of female comedies in between. Oh, Ghostbusters. Did Ghostbusters come out that year?
I don't know. I never saw it.
I never saw Ghostbusters. I like Ghostbusters. I really like Ghostbusters. I think that was 2016 though. But anyway, is that all your thoughts on Trainwreck?
Trainwreck, yeah, I mean, the only other thing I can think to add is, like, I like how it's based in New York.
Right.
A lot of his stuff
give me a New Yorker experience, man. Like,
a lot of his stuff is based in California.
Yeah.
But I feel like because Amy Schumer, like, wrote the script, it was pretty fitting. I like it. Yeah.
Like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, nah. New York definitely has an aesthetic. He pays homage to, Manhattan, the movie, the Woody Allen movie. Woody Allen's like, we can't really talk about it. But there's that.
I don't love Woody Allen.
You don't love Woody Allen? Yeah, no.
Despite the guy himself being a monster, I don't love his movies.
You don't love his movies? Oh, really? Damn. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
We gotta talk about that one day.
Have me on.
Yeah, when we do, I don't think we're doing any meaning of Woody Allen episodes.
Why not?
I can't rock with a dude dating his daughter. But
there's so much to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. His movies actually have a fair amount of whatever to say. Whatever. I'm not trying to really discuss Woody Allen all that much.
Okay, let's move on.
But this movie does pay homage to Manhattan, right? Like in that one scene where, so it pays homage to a lot of New York type filmmaking, and definitely pays respect to what came before. So
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, no, dope. Any last word on Judd Apatow in general?
Yeah, I think everyone should pay attention to things that he'll start to, like his future projects, stuff that he's gonna release. I would say give everything he releases a chance, a shot. Whether it's a TV show or a movie, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised and moved by the end of it, and also have a great time and laugh.
Yeah, no. What does he have? Does he have anything interesting coming up that you are aware of? Or?
Well, for example, like he just released the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, the documentary about the late comedian Gary Shandling, who just passed away.
Oh, interesting.
Some of you might know him from Gary Shandling. Know him from Iron Man 2, where he was the guy who put the pins on Stark, and he said, "You're a prick" or something.
Right.
But outside of Iron Man 2, I mean, he was in the Larry Sanders Show and all of that. But he was really close to Judd Apatow. He was like an inspiration for him, and he actually like ended up getting to work for him.
That's what's up, man.
And with him, and they became close. So the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling is like a really successful documentary. Yeah. Crashing, he's directed a few episodes of Crashing, which is an HBO original starring Pete Holmes. It's about a stand-up comic living in New York City, struggling to become a stand-up comic. It's kind of, again, like Judd Apatow bringing the real-life, experience to the screen. Love on Netflix is also a really good one. He works with his daughter Iris a little bit more in that one too. Definitely suggest Love. Crashing, I would suggest Love over Crashing.
They're both on HBO though.
Love is on Netflix.
Okay.
It's a Netflix original. And these are things he produced, and he directed a few episodes of each of them. But let's hear your some more thoughts from you while I look through this to see if there's anything.
Well, I'm pretty much. For me, Judd Apatow just has a great repertoire as a comedy director. Definitely has one of the biggest influences probably one of the biggest influences in modern comedy history. And yeah, I think without Judd Apatow, we wouldn't have half of the kind of comedy stylistic kind of movies that we would have today. And also salute to him for pushing some great films like The Big Sick out to the world. To me, The Big Sick is one of the best recent films ever made. And of course, we didn't even talk about like movies like Begin Again 2, which is another great movie that he produced. And
Bridesmaids.
Get Him to the Greek is actually one of my favorite comedies of all time. Pineapple Express, of course.
Pineapple Express, these.
We could do a Seth Rogen. And by the way, and I know people are still yelling at the comments, we didn't address Anchorman. Anchorman, a lot has been said about Anchorman. We're going to cover Anchorman once we do the Adam McKay episode, I'm announcing that me and Ace are going to be back to do an Adam McKay episode soon. We're going to go into depth on the Anchorman franchise on that. So, but yeah, that's yeah.
Last thoughts on Judd. I'd say, he's doing a lot of political activism. And I think that kind of reflects like back on his philosophy about art and life and how they kind of like work off each other.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that he's like coming into that position, and he feels like he has enough influence.
Do you think that's going to ever seek into any of his movies, or?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think just knowing him, he'll definitely incorporate the whole Trump era into something he does soon. Because I know that he is a Democrat.
Yeah. No, he's very blue, which is a good side of history, my man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would. Anything else on Judd? Let me think.
Or we could just end the show. That also works too.
Oh yeah, let's just end the show then.
unless you.
Oh well, okay. I'll say one last thing.
Yes.
Did you know that he has there's a Superbad poster on the 3rd floor of USC Cinematic Arts School?
Yes, yeah.
And he signed it, and it said, "Don't drop out like I did," and then he signed it.
That's nice.
I think that's an interesting sentiment.
Yeah, that's right. USC alumni Judd Apatow, of course. He's kind of the pioneer behind the USC comedy program.
Yep.
Too.
Yep.
Yeah. There's big stuff. You're minoring in comedy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. That's my minor. Major is production.
Yeah,
it's great.
Look at that. We're talking to the next. Apatow right here, ladies and gentlemen. The meaning of Judd Apatow, featuring the next Judd Apatow, Cade Huseby. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to Cade. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to add that in post. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. No. Thanks for coming on, man. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time, and I love being here at Collider Studios.
Hey.
Such great energy here, and I really hope I can meet Ace one day.
One day. You and Ace will be in the same room. You're just going to be a guest for the Judd Apatow episode, but since Ace can make it, you filled in as the host, so we really appreciate that.
Dude.
Hey.
C for Cade.
C for Cade.
I'm taking over Collider Studios.
Oh shoot, it's here.
Make sure you go watch Flick Ticks,
yes,
a Movie Pass
watch
parody.
Flick
I
Ticks.
produced that. I was the Judd Apatow on that project.
Hey, there it is. And it's in the top link in the description down below.
And check out my YouTube channel for some of my stuff. And if you liked what I had to say today, maybe check out my Instagram. Post some behind the scenes of Anthony Padilla's stuff there occasionally. And also whatever I'm working on with Robert. So come on over.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, check out Cade. What's your Twitter, Instagram handle?
It's all just at Cade Huseby, Huseby.
Oh, nice. It's gonna be written down on the board there somewhere too. So anyway, y'all, thank you for watching the Meaning of Podcast. This is RB3.
This is your boy Ace. Just kidding, it's Cade.
Hey, Cade. And thank you for watching the Meaning of Podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And iTunes listeners, please just keep listening. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for having me, RB3.
Thanks for coming on, my man.
Night, guys.
Have a good one.